Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another video in the Congressional Debate How-To series. This is Murtaza Kazmi back at again with another video, this time talking about speaking performance. So this is what is the more, theatrical, the more speech-heavy side of congressional debate. So there are some people that like this side a little bit more, some people not so much, but I'm hoping that through the end of this lecture, that whether you like it, whether you don't like it, that you'll gain an appreciation for it at least, and will certainly be able to master these skills and implement them in your own speeches in the future. So let's first discuss why this even matters. Why does speaking performance matters? Well, what you say is half of the battle for sure. Arguments are really important, but the other half of the battle is how you say this. And particularly in real life, what we'll find out sooner rather than later for a lot of you is that often you could be completely correct on an issue, but if you can't word it the correct way, if you're not giving eye contact, if you're not giving confidence to your audience, they may not buy what you're saying, even if it logically makes sense. So always make sure that we have not just adequate, but really good speaking performance to supplement the great content that we've already developed. But also it's what makes Congress unique from other debate events, such as Public Forum and Lincoln Douglas. Although their concept of speaker points do exist, speaking performance is not as important in those events, arguably, as it is in congressional debate, where it's a core element of the activity. So making sure that we can both debate, but we can also speak at the same time in a way that is attractive to the audience. And again, without speaking, this would just be an essay competition, right? We have to be able to give eye contact, to give gestures, facial expressions, things that show that we're not just saying words, that we actually mean the words that we say. So there are several objectives that I want y'all to take away when it comes to speaking performance. First, about looking confident, sounding clear, and connecting with the audience. If you can accomplish these three objectives, then you will be completely fine. You want to be able to thus command the room with your presence. You want people to say, oh, okay, this is Representative X speaking now, so we know that it's about to be a good speech because you have this confidence to you, because you're enunciating your words, you're sounding clear, and because you can connect with the audience. Again, these are harder said. These are obviously easier said than done, but with time, with practice, we can certainly develop these objectives and skills to make sure that we are able to command the room when we are giving a speech. So I've tried to break this down into several different body parts and what you should be doing in each one of these body parts. So I hope that this makes a lot more sense than other explanations of just give eye contact. Obviously, debate is a lot more, or speaking performance is a lot more all-encompassing than simply give eye contact or give some gestures. So what are we specifically looking for? So this is why the body section exists. So full body, what is your full body going to be doing? You're going to be giving a speaker's triangle. If your coaches haven't already taught you, basically you start at one point when you're giving a speech. I'll draw it right here. So let's say you give the introduction here, then you move to this area, like just a little bit of a walk to give your first point. As soon as you finish your first point, then you move to the left here to give your second point. And then finally, you end the speech going to either to the original point or a little bit to the side in the center of the room and giving your conclusion. Usually this is more applicable for extemp, but in this case, we do use speaker's triangle, and it's a very good way to signpost to your audience or basically show them with your physical movements that you're actually moving on to a next point or a next part in your speech. So always follow that. Stand straight, chest out, shoulders relaxed. Appear confident by standing straight and making sure that you have good posture, whatnot. Very self-explanatory. No swaying. Again, this is done by locking your lower body, making sure that you're not going from side to side, because otherwise then your audience is also going to be looking from side to side and seeing where you move. You want your words to do all of the talking. You don't want your body to imply something else. You're moving around, that shows nervousness. So try to cut down on that. What about your arms? Gestures. Gestures are the biggest thing that we can do. How do we do gestures? We have to do it above the stomach. Basically, I call it the cookie cutter zone, where I would have my hands when I'm putting my cookie or when I'm putting my hand in a cookie jar and putting it in my mouth. So about above the stomach, around the chest area, nothing higher than my mouth area, right? Let's just say that. That's where you want all your gestures to occur. And again, below the chin. Not too repetitive or frequent, right? So I would recommend taking videos of yourself to understand whether you're being repetitive or too frequent with your gestures. You want your gestures to mean something. If you're increasing something, like let's say you say you're going to increase something in a piece of resolution, in a piece of legislation, then your arm should move up to indicate that. Conversely, if you're saying something is going to decrease, then your arm should move down. Your gestures should line up exactly with what your words are saying. And that's what I've pointed out here. What about hands? Never in your pockets. That's an absolute no-go. Never put your hands in your pockets. That looks, that shows signs of nervousness, shows signs of unconfidence, and is just generally unprofessional. So never put your hands in your pockets. Dominant hand holds the legal pad. Obviously, depending on what you are comfortable with, left or right hand for the legal pad, you can make that decision. But your speech should only be on one page. There should never be a turning of the pages on your speech. And that's done when you pad correctly. Make sure that all of your speech is available on one single page. Eyes. This is the stereotypical cliche answer, cliche advice, but super, super important. Maintaining eye contact with the judges and the competitors. You don't obviously stare at them, but look at them for a couple of seconds at a time, then move on. Make it sound that you're really connecting with the judge, connecting with the audience, and you do that by giving them eye contact. Again, remember, you're always talking to the judges, to the audience, not at them, right? That's a very clear distinction. So when you're talking to someone, then you're giving them eye contact. You're really showing that you care about that conversation. Whereas if you're shouting at them, then that connection is not formed. What about the mouth and the voice? What are you doing here? Volume variation. You get, softer, quieter on more sentimental parts. You get very, very loud when you try to make a good point, right? Nothing, again, make sure that you're, audible for the entire room. Make sure that everyone can hear you. But also at the same time, make sure that you're not too loud. Otherwise, it'll get annoying to the rest of the audience. Tone variation. Again, are you saying something really sad, really somber? Are you going to bring out those emotions? Are you going to show happiness, joy at the success of a piece of legislation? Are you trying to show anger or frustration with what the status quo looks like? All of these different emotions can be shown through changes in your tone, and it's really important to display them to show the audience what emotions you have and how you really do care about this issue. Speed variation. For example, on the impacts and intros, slow down. But when you come to evidence and analysis, you can speed up the pace a bit because it's not too hard to explain. Those very sentimental, quieter portions of speech, like the impact, should be very, very slow. Let it sink in, right? And then pauses, of course. This is really, really important. A lot of congressional debaters don't use pauses adequately. So making sure that we're pausing enough in our speech so we can give the audience a chance to catch their breath as well. Avoid being monotone is really the big thesis answer for what we should do with our mouth and our voice. Finally, with facial expressions, a lot of the same. Match what you're saying, right? If you're saying that thousands of children are going to die, you shouldn't be laughing, you shouldn't be smiling while you're saying that. So your facial expressions should match what you're saying. You can make sure that you're doing that by taking videos of yourself giving a speech and being honest with yourself, being instructive with yourself to say, am I accomplishing what I want to accomplish? Am I showing the others through this video what I would like the judges to see? If the answer is no, then you can make some changes. All right, what about words and rhetoric? So we're out of the body section. So we want to use, fancy word and rhetoric in our speech impacts, in our AGD, and also in the conclusion. I'd say the general tips behind this, again, utilizing emotion, imagery, personally impacting the judges, keeping it simple, and focusing on what you're debating and where you're debating at. It's really important, this key, to be to the point. Rhetoric that drags out way too long is not going to be very attractive to the judges. So you want to keep it as simple as possible. Especially at these national tournaments, focus where you're debating. If an issue is particularly affecting Kansas, for example, and the tournament you're in is in Kansas, then maybe you can talk about that. But don't stereotype, obviously focus on details and descriptions. That's self-explanatory. But this is the general objective and tips that we want to do when we're talking about having rhetoric in our speeches. There are several techniques, again, kind of as a callback to one of our previous lectures. This is where you can kind of use those English literary devices to your benefit. The main ones that I wrote down were rule of three and ethos, logos, and pathos. I'm sure you guys are well aware of ethos, logos, and pathos at this point because you've taken English classes. But rule of three, that's just the idea that naturally things that come in three sound more attractive when we're hearing them. So like, just grouping things of three together will sound better because of the rhythm or whatever the reason is. It's just shown in psychology that it's pretty nice to listen to. I'm not going to read all of these. I think you can read these on your own time, but these are just some of the examples that I've put down of literary devices that you can find a way to implement in your speech. What matters less is the actual technique that you use. What matters more is the effect that it has on your audience. So no judge is going to down you because they're like, oh, I wanted an analogy and they gave us an anaphora. Like, they don't care. What they want is that your impact, that your effect of the rhetoric that you have is very strong, emotional, elicits some sort of a response from the judges and from your audience as well. So as long as you complete that, then you should be all good. But this is a relatively shorter lecture, but I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you now have a better idea of speaking performance. Next time, we're going to do our final lecture in this series on how to prepare speeches. So I really hope that you guys will enjoy that. But for this penultimate lecture, it's been an honor to teach you guys. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your days. And this is Mortaza Kazmi signing out. Peace.